How's it going out there, America, the world, and people that go on the internet, YouTube, whatever, knowledge or thrill seekers or whoever, whatever you might be. Anyways, my name's Robert. You can call me Bob if you like. I'm making a video today. This is a different kind of a Micronauts video. I wanted to make a Micronauts video and try to possibly touch base, or link up with others, that had thoughts or feelings about this. Is that here's what I wanted to talk about or say about the Micronauts, and not about the Micronauts as the toy line. Those who are familiar with the Micronauts toy line, is that is the kind of the catalyst and the precursor to what I'm going to talk about, which is the comic book. Is that the toy line was something that came out in the late 70s, and it was kind of this thing that existed, kind of almost as a parallel universe to like Star Wars or something, even, Star Trek Backlash and different sci-fi, whatever else, sci-fi that was out there. But mainly, from my point of view, it was kind of like, it was just out there, like, for whatever reason, it's just like, hey, Star Wars isn't the only stuff that's out there. There's a lot going on, and it existed, there was names, and there were different things that existed with the Micronauts, but there was no real kind of story. There was no hard copy, so to speak, like what their actual story was. It was like they had a name, like say I had a time traveler, right? Or you had an Acroyer, or you had a Biotron or whatever, It was like you had a little bit of info, a little bit of, character profile, but that was it. There was no hard copy story of anything that ever did or where they came from, so on and so forth, right? And they existed on this parallel with Star Wars. Now, Star Wars had a comic that came out, and, I like to hold this up as a kind of a weird reference and example, is that here was a comic that was born of after the movie came out, right? Okay. I think, and I think you probably might agree with me on this, is that, Star Wars comic, I don't think viewers or the audience, that was, familiar with the movie and turned to the comic book thought that it was, a real likeness of the actual characters. It almost existed on a different level. I don't know if this was because of some kind of licensing limitations, or if it was just something they chose to do, or, the artist was that bad, or really what it was going on with it. But there was some sense that the characters were the same, highly, built, or, so on and so forth, upon they were the same, but they looked different. They weren't exactly, rendered like, say, the likeness of, say, the actor that portrayed the character. And that was kind of a second afterthought, is maybe that, it's kind of like maybe the comic book characters were the actual, it could have been more truer to the likenesses of the characters that were portrayed by the actors. You never know. It starts to kind of be like, well, whatever. But it kind of was a slight turn for me really pursuing obtaining a lot of them. But with the Micronauts, the Micronauts was kind of like, it was different to me. To me, I never, originally owned any of the Micronauts comics, but it was like, just at a glance, and this is probably why it's so fascinating to me, is at a glance, it kind of seemed that, they were somehow better, they somehow, in a way, once they became personified in the story, they seemed better than the toys, in a way, and here's what I'm ultimately getting to is that, here I am, 30 years later, I'm in a, the comic book run ran from like 79 up to 80, and then it was cut, it wasn't on, Marvel lineup anymore. And it resurfaced, I guess, 10 or 15 years later on a different, company had somehow gotten it and kind of rebirthed it or revamped, brought it back. And I didn't have any of those issues. I did have, some of the original run issues, 13, 17, Computer X, here's one that had Bug on the cover, so on and so forth. Or 24, or no, 17 was Death Fugue of the Psycho Man, 24 was Computer X, and a few other ones, here and there. Here's one with the Fantastic Four on, we're kind of, they go up against the Psycho Man and intertwine with the Micronauts. But, it's like I got a few issues, and, I started looking at the story, and saying, wow, that's really something, is that, here this entity exists, is that, for those of us who remember the toy, it was kind of mysterious, and they were kind of spooky, or whatever. They were kind of weird, the interchangeable world of the Micronauts, and then, it was rebirthed in the comic. They came from inner space, the Micronauts. So, it's kind of like, well, they existed without a story, and then here they are, this artist that, knew someone at Marvel got inspired and thought, well, hey, I know this, they kind of put the, they brought the story to life, and kind of, uncovered the fossil, of the beast of the story of the original Micronauts, so on and so forth. And I just thought it was really interesting as I started to look at it, there's certain, things that they changed, is that, the time traveler, I believe his name was Commander Rand, and, Croyer was in, Biotron, and then, I read this in an editorial that someone wrote in, and they noticed this about it, is that here, Bug, the Bug character, right, which looks like a grasshopper, never actually existed in the Micronauts, was never a Micronaut. There was no Micronaut toy called Bug, Grasshopper, right? There was one called Hornetroid, right? Which I don't know if that one was in the story. They cut that one. So that, and there's other differences and inconsistencies, and just kind of the way it was portrayed, it was kind of just like, it really kind of made me raise my brow and say, wow, I mean, that's a hell of it's a hell of a gig to get. I don't know how many times that's happened, is that there's been a toy out that was this entity, a great many things kind of existed of it. And to me, I mean, like I said, I mean, I'm that old as I actually had a time travel. I remember them, vaguely having one, and that was this thing, is that they existed kind of in this parallel, universe, which was kind of held up to, what was going on with Star Wars, and other kind of things going on in sci-fi, so on and so forth. So anyways, I just thought it was weird, and I just wanted to come on here and say, look, this is a different kind of Micronauts video, because, I wanted to say to people, look, sometimes stories, this is a great story. I mean, the art is kick-ass. I really honestly thought that, even though I think that I don't have all the issues, and I think that the Micronauts should find a way to come up, out of the microverse and become actual, human, Earth-like, humanoid-sized, hero-sized. Apparently they're, they're small, could be about, 6 inches, just off the top when they, emerge out of the microverse. They're smaller, I don't know if that was ever addressed, because I don't have all the issues. You might want to call me up and talk, team up, maybe, addressing that, is how that could be addressed. But aside from that, it's more like, the way, sometimes when someone, I mean, you hear one person's version of the story, it's almost like, someone seeing a crime at the scene of a crime, or a room, a rumor or a campsite story. It's like, you never know. You might ask some idiot. I'm not saying the person that wrote it's an idiot. No, I mean, it's pretty good. A lot of it in here is very valid, and some, so on and so forth. But sometimes, things might be like, a fairy tale version, or different, and a fantasy, you're seeing something that's a fantasy about a fantasy, but in reality, there could be a reality, facets and better realizations of what the realities, and the different factors of it were. And if you can bear some kind of witness to this, is I know that I may know something about it. Okay, I may know something about the Micronauts. And you think about the millions of kids that had Micronauts, and they play with these toys, and whatever stories and ideas they had about them. Especially if maybe someone that is in the boat with me, is that you're from that certain genre, is that those might be some of your first childhood memories, per se, which for me they happen to be, and it's like I may know something about it, and there may be some inaccuracies. It's just like a rift forms when this type of things happen. Sometimes, it's it can be like a song. You choose to play a different rendition of a song, and it reverberates throughout space-time indefinitely, and it seems great, and there's a little bit of truth to it, but ultimately, there's another truth somewhere beneath the waves. If you know anything about this, or you think you might know about it, contact me, because I think that I might know something about it, and I'd like to possibly address it, and maybe try to piece together some kind of piece together the mystery of it, Anyways, hopefully I'll maybe talk to you sometime soon.